Hey, friend, welcome to the podcast. You Are Significant, the podcast where you will hear real stories from real people, and we will get down into the truths of your own significance. You were created on purpose for a purpose with seeds of greatness inside of you. Now, let's get down to it. So, welcome to You Are Significant. We're glad that you're back to listen to another episode. And we're so thankful for you and the time that you're taking to be here and to show up. And we've prayed over you together before we recorded and hit record today. So, know that just by being here, you're already blessed. And I am so excited to have Dr. Jennifer Cilino-Folks with us today. She's already become a friend because we've gotten a chance to go to a retreat together and get to know each other more recently. Dr. Jennifer Cilino-Folks is known as the Maverick. She is a licensed clinical psychologist of over 20 years, an experienced healthcare leader and life coach. She is known for her work helping individuals heal from trauma, coaching high achieving clients through plateaus, and helping entrepreneurs work through sabotage and mental blocks. Her tell it like it is, but use humor style creates a comfortable atmosphere for clients to be challenged, learn, heal, and move forward with freedom to live aligned with purpose. Welcome to You Are Significant, Jennifer.
Oh, I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much, Darlene.
Well, I want to get started today the way that we normally do and let you share your story. And we love to hear about people's childhood because our inner child is formed there and continues to influence us, I think, for always. So tell us a little bit of your story.
So I always love this part because I'm a Jersey girl who lives in the Midwest, and that is a an experience in itself. If any of you listeners are out there from the East Coast, we're tell it like it is people. And sometimes there's a learning process with that. But you have to refine that. So growing up, that was really that was my thing. Um, I kind of argued. My parents used to tell me I was going to be an attorney when I grew up because like I could see around corners and I always tried to find the loopholes. Um, I'm the second of two that were born to my parents. My parents are married, they're still alive. And I learned a lot from watching my older sister grow up from her mistakes. I was a watcher even then. And
Mhm.
so I just changed my behavior accordingly so I could come out on top. And most of the time that meant that I was a stinker to the adults. Like the adults really just didn't know what to do. And it wasn't like I wasn't like boosting cars or whatnot, but I think my words really frustrated my family. And I'm going to use some, well, I'll taper my language here. My famous quote that I tell people is my parents used to tell me that I could argue a piece of poop out of the middle of the road. And like I get that reaction all the time because if you can imagine a child like just sitting there arguing and you know some excrement just finally being like I give up, I'm moving, how how much that and really telling what that meant. um and I was kind of a tomboy and an athlete, and we had to be jack of all trades back in the day. That was really valued. You had to do a little bit of everything.
Mhm.
And but I learned that my words could be powerful, but also get me in trouble.
Mm.
Because I had a smart mouth, or I could think really quickly on my feet before the other person could. So there was this character trait. If you look in my old yearbooks, it's always like, oh, Jen, you always told it like it was. We always knew where we stood with you. And I get the same comments now. So that is very deep rooted.
Mhm.
And as I went through my education. I love history. History is really a collection of people's stories, and I became fascinated with World War II history because I wanted to know how somebody so insignificant and small and insecure, like an Adolf Hitler, could perpetrate one of the world's most heinous atrocities to um, a beautiful set of people across the
Mhm.
world. And so I started studying human behavior, and that led me into my education with psychology. So I studied psychology and criminal justice and political science in my undergrad. I went to the University of Connecticut, and I got a very good education about geopolitics and a lot of naughty behavior, and got a chance to really see kind of that people are people wherever you go at
Mm.
a very, I would say early age. And did some work at a place called Alexander Cybalski uh, prison, like a criminal institution. It was a lower level in Connecticut. And it was just real brief, but that was my first kind of um, dabbling with the criminal world and criminal justice, and really understanding that kind of mind. And I know that sounds really sexy because nowadays people listen to serial killer podcasts and all the things, and I always kind of shake my head because what it's actually like is like smelly, it's loud, it's really gross, it's a little frightening, and there's nothing sexy about that world whatsoever. And by
Mm.
sexy, I don't mean like sexually attractive. I just mean like people find it absolutely fascinating. But really, what
Mhm.
it is it's gross. It's just gross, and it's sad.
Yeah.
God didn't create us to land in prisons.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, you end up seeing the consequences of if people don't understand the significance of their actions and they're torn down and they're in an
mhm,
environment where they are not encouraged in good behaviors, they're even actually encouraged in bad behaviors. I
oh,
remember babysitting a boy when I was a teenager that his dad actually taught him to fight and
mhm.
get into fights and be mean, and that little boy one time kicked me in the mouth, and I had this white spot on my lip where he had kicked me that just lasted a long time, and it was just sort of a reminder for a long time that there are even children in the world that are being taught to be bad.
Oh, for sure. And even if you don't learn that from your parents, you do learn it from your peers.
Mhm.
Now, I grew up in a small northern town of Jersey, and Jersey sounds kind of gangster, and it kind of is, but not where I grew up. I mean, it was very homogenous, and we were middle class, and all the things. But in middle
All of
school,
Jersey is not the ghetto.
right? There are beautiful places. But like in middle school, I picked up really quickly with the catty behavior. It was a kill or be killed, metaphorically, environment where if you weren't the bully, you were the bullied, and there
Mm,
wasn't anything in between, and it was very much survival. So I was kind of a bully in middle school, and
mhm.
I sucked at it, but it because I let that go in high school. I kind of like I moved away from that, and that's where I was like, no, I don't like this. You do whatever. And I kind of just, again, kept that reputation of I'm just going to do my own thing, and if you like me, great, and if you don't, great. But
Mhm.
um I'd like to sound morally superior and say that was God working in my life, but I think that was not the case because I was not close to God.
Mhm.
I was raised in the Catholic Church,
Mhm.
and again, with my mouth and with the way my brain worked, I was like, you know, I was giggling every time the priest said Gentiles, or I was, very immature, but I was an altar server, and me and my friends would try to make each other laugh in church. I mean, we weren't necessarily the most mature group of the world, but when I saw hypocrisy, I called it out, and that's not really always welcome.
Mhm.
But I had very strong feelings about that, and I didn't really know God, so I didn't understand that it was man who was, um, full of hypocrisy, and it wasn't our
Mhm.
God. It wasn't Jesus who was, the hypocrite. Um,
Right.
and he knocked on my door and kind of taught me those things as I was going through grad school. Um,
Mm.
I wanted to do something bigger and understand stories and kind of put the intellectual pieces together of people's lives, and so went to grad school to get my doctorate in DC. And you know as I was going through that, because again, psychology at the time for me was an intellectual exercise. There wasn't this connection to other people. It was
Mhm.
like, "Why are you doing what you're doing? I wanna figure that out." Like,
Mhm.
that's interesting to me. The person was like, they weren't there at the time, which sounds terrible, but I'm just gonna be honest. And, I found like I could put some pieces together for people really quickly, but, like, there wasn't any heart connection to what I was doing.
Mm.
Um, and at times that kind of serves you because you want to be able to solve some problems, especially as I was going into forensics at the time and working in the court system. And that's not necessarily, you can't be a bleeding heart and go into environments like this. And I didn't yet have the spiritual skill. I think I was a good discerner. That's a gift of mine, a spiritual
Mhm.
discerner, but I didn't know how to balance compassion and understanding.
Mm.
So connecting that head and that heart knowledge. And I think that's because that was obviously disconnected for me as a child and then growing up. Um,
Mhm.
Head knowledge was very valued. I grew up in my family who identified me as the smart one. My sister was the
Oh.
pretty one, and I was the smart one. So
Mm.
I wound up growing up feeling like, okay, I have to foster this because, of course, I'm the smart one. I can figure it out. I can do all these things. Um, and my sister grew up like feeling like she was pretty, but she was dumb.
Mm.
Of course, neither is true.
Right.
Neither
I
is true.
mean,
But those
there's
seeds,
truth, but there's also greater truth
yeah,
because you're pretty and smart, and I imagine that she was pretty and smart also.
she, she's very smart.
Yeah.
Has a master's degree. She's the smart cookie.
She's smart too. Yeah, but a lot of times I think as women, because of how we're treated as a little girl, we're labeled. Either we're labeled very quickly, pretty, not pretty, pretty, not pretty. And then also, like you said, that label of, who are the smart ones in the room, and depending on who it is, sometimes we don't get the smart label very easily because of who's in the room and who's commanding the room. But if we do get that, sometimes we lean on the smarts. And it often does seem like it's a either or.
Mhm.
Very rarely does a woman get both labeled smart and pretty.
For sure. For sure. And I had a lot of guy friends growing up, and my sister was in high school when I was in high school. So they were like, "Oh, your sister." I still have a friend who's like, "Oh, your sister's hot." I'm like, "Okay, we're all old people now. Like, let it go." But it's one of those things that if you water that and you feed it, it grows. And that really kind of affected me in college. So I focused on my athletics. I was a lacrosse player, and we lobbied with my school, and we became a Division 1 lacrosse team, which was amazing. We sucked, but it was
Whoop,
amazing.
whoop.
And I love lacrosse, and it was like a big part of my life for that period of time while I was doing my studies and working my way through. But as the end of your grad school kind of comes, you have to there's this weird process for getting a an internship and then a residency, a postdoc residency. And I won't go through that here because it's kind of boring, but I wound up in Illinois. And just prior to coming to Illinois, um, God was starting to lay on my heart. He was like, Jen, be Jersey. Do whatever you need to do. You can speak whatever language you need to speak. Don't use my name in vain. There, it was like, you can do say whatever you want to say.
Wow.
Don't say that. And that,
Hmm.
I mean, I think you know me a little bit.
That's a strong message.
Yes, your audience doesn't know me, but like, swearing's not off the table in my vocabulary. I try to massage it a little bit when it's not necessary. But for me to hear that and not be close to God at that time, I was like, I feel like that's reasonable. Again, God speaks fluent Jen. He does. And
When God gives you a clear message too, don't ignore it.
no. And so
Mhm.
I was like, oh, of course. Like I can totally do that. And then he introduced the Left Behind series to me, and I started reading that, and I was like, "Ah, there's no way the Bible said that." Now, I was raised in the Catholic Church. I went to CCD. I was an altar server. I did all the things. My mom was friends with the priest, so I never got away with anything. Like all the things, but I didn't understand what God's word actually said. And so I was like, there's no
Yeah.
way. And so that book made me, again, God is like, Jen's kind of an intellectual. I have to start knocking on her door using that. And he very much did. So I started comparing what was in the book to what was in the Bible. And I was like, son of a gun, it does say that.
Mhm.
Okay. So I made my way through Revelation and like started kind of working through that. And he was working on my heart. And one day, two women knocked on my door. I was in St. Charles, Illinois, or Geneva, I think at the time, in my apartment. And Darlene, I let these two girls in my apartment. Now, if you know me, you ain't getting in my house. Like, not happening. But I was watching the movie A Walk to Remember. So if that's the old Mandy Moore movie where she like converts the boyfriend and helps him, kind of be a better person. And so God's like, okay, I'm going to soften her heart by watching this movie. And then a knock comes on the door. And
Wow.
it was these two girls, and they led me to Christ.
Wow.
And, so uh, the fact that, behold, I stand at the door and knock is a literal thing. God has made his presence in my life very literally, very concretely. And then there's been some other things, but it's just such a powerful thing because no matter what we go through, or if we're the best of the goody two shoes, or we're Casey and my friends, Casey's my husband. They call me Jenny Five Knuckles. That's my New Jersey gangster name because I'm always funny. And
Whether
so,
you're a Jenny Five Knuckles or
or goody two shoes, it doesn't matter. God speaks your language, and he's knocking in what way that you need to hear the knock.
I love that point because I think I it's so true because every single person was created by him. And so when we stop and we really think about that, that origination is it we matter. We were his. Without him we wouldn't be, and we're going to return to dust, you
Mhm.
know. whether our body is laid in a casket or we're cremated, eventually we're going to be dust again. And, the journey in between, in that journey,
Mhm.
he's calling our name. And he knows our name. I'm reading Chronicles in the
Oh,
Bible right now. And one of the things that's standing out to me, I mean, sometimes somebody was laughing at me listening to that the other day. They were with me. It was my birthday week last week. And so I had company here, and she was like, I listen to that when I want to go to sleep. And I'm like, I know, right? But what's really standing out to me this time listening is God knows my name. He knows your name. And there's no one that God doesn't know your name. And I
mhm,
mean, He knows every number of hairs on our head. He knows all our thoughts. He is omniscient. The devil,
mhm.
I don't believe, is
It's not.
omniscient. He doesn't know our thoughts. He only knows what we say out loud,
Mhm,
which is why we need to be careful what we say out loud. But God does. And so
mhm.
He saw you, He knew you had watched that movie, He knew the timing of everything, and, ugh, how
I will
amazing.
tell you, so this was, just the last piece of that story is her name is Hannah Walker, and she, um, goes to a church in Elgin, Illinois, and again, that was a little bit it was far away from my apartments, and
Mm.
they were door-to-door knockers, and it was her birthday. And she
Aw.
was frustrated because, when some people, when religious people come knocking on your door, you're going to get a lot of eyeball rolls. You're going to get a lot of like slam the doors, whatever. And she was fed up, and she said, God, if I'm supposed to do this, just give me one. Like, show me one person. And the next door was mine, and it was me.
Oh,
So
wow.
I love telling that story because some people get that experience. Some people it's a little bit less clear,
Mhm,
but he comes to you where you're at. And so I thought, well, this was the beginning of, God showing me people instead of doing.
mhm.
The being part of us instead of just doing. Now I'm a doer. I will be a doer till the day I die. It's something I got to pay attention to. But as I started working at the prison, first in my postdoc and then a few years after, um, a lot of the guys that I worked with, and I also taught college classes in the prison that I worked at. You just started seeing people, and that doesn't mean that I let my guard down because I worked with gangbangers, murderers, drug dealers, rapists, child molesters. I mean, you name it, they were in there for it. And,
Mhm.
I was in a classroom teaching 15 guys with one guard, in general population.
I'm
But
sure your radar was up.
all the time, it still is up because
Yes.
those I still treat the same people.
Mm,
Believe it or not, in the hospital that I work at a we call it an ambulatory hospital. So it's just a regular hospital, and we've got a mental health outpatient clinic in the hospital. So it's not a psych ward or anything like that. But I right now I treat two retired high level gang members.
mhm,
And they're just people. They've got aches and pains because they've been through a lot, but they've got a lot of trauma. They have their own stories. These are people.
mm,
And if you can help people keep the peace, not just the gang members, but a lot everybody, if you can help people find peace, that becomes the conduit with which you are really allowing God to use you and making his kingdom in the world. Some of
mhm,
my people I treat are Christians, some are not. The Holy Spirit is in the room the whole time, no matter what, whether they want
mhm,
him there or not, because I invite him. He's
mhm.
my buddy. So
He's your true guard, really.
for sure, but also
Yeah.
my source of intel. I
Mhm,
pay attention to when I'm working with um, I work with a lot of trauma. So whether it
Mhm.
be sexual trauma, a lot of it's sexual trauma,
Mhm.
unfortunately. But other traumas like deaths or violence that's witnessed or whatever. Um, but you're paying attention to the person. This is why it's not just an intellectual
Mhm.
exercise. You're paying attention to the voice or the one word. And again, because I allow God to use me to pay attention to things in a very secular world, and then I work in a very secular department. um
Mhm.
so it's like that's my help. That's what helps that curative piece, in addition to techniques and whatnot. So I know I moved through from like prison to clinic, but prison work is it's one type of rewarding because you're keeping the peace in a very tense and heated situation. um, but as I started working and supervising in an outpatient area, really you're treating the same people. You're treating the
Mhm.
criminals, you're treating the housewife, you're treating the entrepreneur, you're treating everybody. And I felt like that would give me more of an ability to really make a difference and help people heal.
Mhm.
But I got into coaching because while I'm still in my practice, because I see people in the entrepreneur world and in their endeavors with their dreams, and they want to make the money, or they want to make a difference or open up that shop or that business, and help others, but they're still so wounded themselves. So when that happens, you're like, they're not necessarily going to come to a mental health clinic for help. So what you're going to notice is like, then they're walking around and they're like, why is my business not thriving? So when I coach, that allows people a healing space to work through traumas, to work through those hurts, um, and stop those cycles of behavior in a very um, safe. And I make it kind of fun. I mean, I always say, like, you should love and hate your therapist and love and hate your coach. Like, you kind of want to punch them in the face sometimes, but that's okay. We've got big shoulders. So, you know, to give them that space to kind of grow and get to that end point.
That is so good. And I think, not every coach can say they come from that background. And I think that just makes your coaching so valuable because you do have that training in trauma.
Mhm.
And um, my observation, because of our ministry background, I grew up a minister's daughter, a minister's wife. There, most everyone has trauma to some degree. And it is sad how many times it is sexual trauma. And that shows up not just for women, but men as
Correct.
well. Um, and a lot of people don't realize the high percentage of men that were mistreated as boys. And so it's interesting to connect with you here and to see your prison experience in your work as a doctor, and the connection between that in your childhood and then how it leads to crime. And um, for us, we've worked in recovery for 5
Mhm.
years plus since 2019, and it is sad how many times, the addiction behavior really is born out of the trauma, and then it's either offered to them by a parent or an uncle or someone they meet, um, someone they work for as a teenager, but it's introduced as a coping mechanism. And even sometimes it's like payment, if you will, which is
Yeah.
terrible to think about. So,
Mhm.
A lot of times people's trauma doesn't start out, it's like the behavior they end up in life isn't it wasn't their idea. It's
Mhm.
where they were led by unhealthy adults.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
and then they just find themselves in this unthinkable situation with these consequences and like, "Oh my goodness, how did I get here?" And so someone like you to help them find their way out. The way I think about the consequences is like a spider web. They just get so caught up and entangled in this web,
Mhm.
and they cannot get out of it by themselves. They're going to have help,
Mhm.
support, and help in order to get out of it. So I think I'm going into coaching as well. I've been in coaching for a lot of years, but going into paid coaching, I can just see more and more the value of having a coach and the need. Like you just can't do it on your own. You have to have someone to support and help you through the
Uh,
process to get to the healing.
Totally. And it's not just trauma. I mean, your web metaphor is really good because we all have these patterns of behaviors that we get wrapped up in.
Mm.
You know, if I didn't heal from, like, my words are dangerous, uh, look what I do for a living. I'm a psychologist. I'm a
You have
coach.
had
I
to find your voice, your
yeah,
healing voice
yeah,
too.
for
Mhm,
sure.
mhm.
So, and speaking at retreats, my whole life is about words. And so, that is really it's breaking our cycles regardless of what our origin story is, whether it just
Mhm,
be happenstance, like you're kind of a Italians use the word scutch as a child,
mhm.
or or you've got trauma. It's like, okay, we have these patterns, we have to recognize them, we have to, heal from them and move forward. And fortunately, um you know my relationship with my husband, like, we are a very collaborative team. So he's now retired from law enforcement, and we met working a murder case, but um which is amazing to me every time I say it. Yeah, I
How
brag.
love can be born out of that.
Oh, for sure. But I think, having that back to back relationship, um and that definitely, and both of us kind of guided by God, of course, but like, that gives you the power to, um and the strength to really do the work that we do, so that we can be present and help people through some really terrible journeys. And I
Mhm,
don't use the word terrible like we use it. These are terror filled journeys,
mhm.
a lot of the time. But also, like, just the disappointed person in their life where they're not where they think they should be, or they're too scared to do something because they're people pleasing, or they think they're too old, or whatever it happens to be. So that's kind of where I'm like, I see you. And usually when I see you, I can see you at the end of your journey. I just have to help you see it.
Yes, having vision for people. Well, I'm so excited that you came on and shared your story with us today and all of the points along the way where you saw your significance. And I just pray the listener today can see their significance through your story. I definitely have been encouraged. And I will have in the show notes how to connect with Jennifer. Also, you can find her on Instagram, and in her bio is how to connect with her for a discovery call to see if you would like to connect with her for more coaching. If this episode has spoke with you today as it has to me, then definitely reach out to her for that free discovery call and be watching her social media for more opportunities to connect with her at retreats. And if you have enjoyed this episode and would like to invite her to be a speaker at your retreat, she does that as well. So many talents and gifts and ways you're paying forward what you have gone through and turning it into a gift, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to You Are Significant. I hope this episode inspired you to embrace your own God given purpose. If this episode inspired you and blessed you, would you please share it out with a friend who needs to be reminded of their own significance? And remember to hit subscribe. Until next time, remember to walk in faith, find the joy, and stand in your significance.